Hello and welcome back to live coverage of the Apex Gaming $5,000 Modern Open. I'm Tandy, joined by Ross. Say hi, Ross.
Hi, Ross.
This is an invitational qualifier to the Apex Gaming's Invitational in November, as well as a regional championship qualifier for the first one of next year, I believe, right?
Yes, I think that's the season we're in now, and that one's going to be in Chicago,
I think it's Denver, actually, right?
Denver.
I don't know. Doesn't
Oh,
matter.
Chicago's the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
You're right.
Anyway, we got a lot on the line besides money, but we do have $5,000 cash money up for grabs. We have 3 rounds in the books, and the format is taking shape. Ross, why don't you give us a little bit of a rundown of what you think we're going to be seeing over the next few rounds based on what's doing well, as well as the match we're going to be watching right now.
Yeah, well, we're going to see a lot of Rakdos Evoke. No surprise, I think, to anyone. Plenty of that at our 3-0 table, but we're going to start with two of the most well-known players on our tour here, both eschewing Rakdos for a different strategy. It's TJ Radizak, who we saw in round 1, playing Yawgmoth and piloting it very well, playing against Dylan Ham, bringing Living End.
Yeah,
Very
these are
interesting one.
two of the Stone Cold killers on the Apex series, and it's going to be a fun match to watch. These two players, know each other very well and know how each other play. I'll say this: TJ's been getting really hardcore on some Golgari Yawgmoth. Not really something I expected him to be piloting too often, but his success over the last month with the deck has been staggering.
Yep, made the top 12 last week at SEG Columbus, having a very strong start here. And this is a very interesting matchup. Normally, Living End, very good against creature decks.
Yep.
The namesake card is a sweeper. You get to cast it as early as turn 3, and start turning the corner quickly, putting pressure on your opponent. But this Yawgmoth deck is very resilient to removal and has a combo of its own that could go back over the top. Also, there's a main deck copy of Endurance that can be tutored for out of TJ's deck. He's got a couple more on the sideboard, so that disruption is something that Dylan Ham is going to have to watch out for as well.
All right. Well, big shout out to Jim Davis for throwing us a raid while we were between rounds. Love you, Jim. Thank you so much for all of his followers coming over here. We'd love if you hit the follow button. Apex Gaming has one of these big Magic weekends roughly once every 90 days. We do F&M. We do all sorts of other fun stuff. And soon we're going to be doing a bunch of Lorcana events that we'll be streaming. So make sure to hit that follow button. But the players are in the feature match area and they're ready to go. So let's head on down there and let them start. On your left, TJ Radizak playing Golgari Yawgmoth. On your right, Dylan Ham is on the play with Living In. Let's see if he has one of those cyclers to start the game.
Being on the play important here because of TJ spikes the one Endurance. You could potentially cast, Dylan could potentially cast his Living End before Endurance is up for the hard cast. But a turn 1 ignoble hierarch for Radizak means that Endurance could come down as early as turn 2.
All right, Generous Int is the cycle. That's going to go get a forest, and it gets a breeding pool since it has Forest Island type line. Generous Int, a cycle of land cyclers from the Lore of the Ring set that have made a huge impact in Modern. Lore and Revealed, Generous Int, and I can't remember the rest of them, but you get the idea. They all do the same thing.
Yeah, Generous Int, a quality mana fixer in this deck. Also something that can get you green mana through a Blood Moon.
Right.
So you can find your basic forest with it.
I absolutely love the Land Cyclers. Lore and Revealed is easily my favorite card from the Lore of the Ring set.
Okay, I like Grist here. Grist is for TJ can let him build towards a combo,
Yeah.
but it doesn't die to Living End.
Right. Doesn't die to Living In, and also fills the graveyard slightly, so if Living In is ever cast, it might be lethal from the other side.
yeah. If you mill a Yawgmoth and some undying creatures, you could turn the tide and say, yeah, sure, Living End.
All right, pitching Waker of Waves to its ability, going to dig at the top 2. That one is a nice one because it digs deeper than the other cyclers, but it does cost a little more. But the static effect of shrinking your opponent's stuff and the enormous body, that 7/7, is nice. Here comes Violent Outburst. We're going to go ahead and cast that now to get some creatures back. We'll see if Dylan Ham wants to cycle Street Wraith or anything in response to casting the Living End.
Interesting here because the Ignoble Hierarch in TJ's graveyard that he milled with that Grist activation means that he's only losing the Insect token to this Living End. So for Dylan, this is a lot more about getting some creatures of his own onto the battlefield so he can maybe start pressuring that Grist or pressuring TJ's life total.
All right, I like TJ's spot here. This seems like a very premature Living In from Dylan Ham, but he recognizes that Grist is going to turn the graveyard and be somewhat problematic down the line. Maybe it's just okay with having both creatures get killed by Grist over the next 2 turns, and then trying to set it up again following that.
Yeah, it looks like he does have a Violent Outburst in hand, so set up for another Living End. We did see one Living End go to the graveyard with the Waker of Waves activation. Not sure exactly how many are in Dylan's deck. It's either 3 or 4.
Yeah, it is often 4 these days because it does pitch to grief.
Yeah, and it is 4, so that's part of the reason you sometimes see endurance in Living End decks. You can recycle them.
All right, here's Agatha Soul Cauldron. Let's get this bad boy, this mythic rare artifact, legendary artifact from Wilds of Eldraine. This one exiles creatures from any graveyard, and then all of your creatures with a +1/+1 counter on them have the abilities of all cards exiled with Agatha Soul Cauldron. So, could use that to eat Dylan Ham's graveyard, but can also use it to maybe combo kill.
To juice his own creatures. A lot of utility for that newly printed card for TJ Radizak in this matchup. A nice one to deploy here.
All right, these two big boys come chunking in at Grist, both threatening to knock it off, and TJ decides not to double chump, just going to let the Grist fall. Now, Agatha Soul Cauldron can exile the Grist, and then any creature in play acts as a Grist. That's so awesome.
It's a little weird. Things are about to get weird.
Awesome. Dylan Ham's like, what's that do?
Buckle up, buckaroos. We're going for a ride.
All right, let's see if Dylan Ham has any responses here. The +1/+1 counter gets put on any creature you want. And the Agatha Soul Cauldron grants the abilities of the creatures that are under it. And technically, Grist has abilities and is a creature. So we're going to call a judge. I'm pretty sure the creature acts like a planeswalker that can attack. That's what I'm pretty sure about, but I don't know for a fact. You might not be able to plus or minus because there's no loyalty on it. And I think you can turn a planeswalker into a creature and then still use loyalty abilities. You just have to track the loyalty separate from the +1/+1 counters.
Yeah, loyalty ability. I believe that this will work, and it's not a planeswalker, so having no loyalty doesn't mean you put it in the graveyard.
Right.
So it bypasses that aspect of the planeswalker rules, but it does grant the creature these loyalty abilities.
All right, so we're gonna get our head judge over here just to confirm because this is a very complicated thing. Garrison Foat. I don't know how to say it last name. FOGT.
Garrison.
Yeah, old Garrison. Going to be coming in and explaining to both players exactly how this works because Grist is a strange card, and Agatha Soul Cauldron, also a strange card. Now, I know what Necrotic Ooze does, right? If Necrotic Ooze is in play and Grist is in the graveyard, can Necrotic Ooze do all those abilities? Because that's basically what we're asking here, right?
Yeah, effectively the same thing. Just replacing Necrotic Ooze with any creature with a +1/+1 counter on it. Yeah, Grist is a legal target to. You can exile any card with Soul Cauldron, so any card is legal to exile. It is a creature when it's in the exile zone, and it has activated abilities.
I wonder. So I didn't even think about the thing you brought up, where a planeswalker with no loyalty on it dies, and if that's what happens, it would be so funny to use it on your opponent's stuff. Put a counter on your opponent's creature, and then it dies because it's a Grist with no abilities or no loyalty.
Make your own machine gun.
Oh yeah, Agatha Soul Cauldron, extremely complex, 2-cost artifact from Wilds of Eldraine.
Yeah, and it certainly seems like Dylan was not expecting this interaction to play out the way we think it does.
Yeah, but TJ knows that it does what he thinks it does because he's been playing this deck for about 3 or 4 weeks now, and this is his second tournament so far with Agatha Soul Cauldron. So while it's new to us, it's not that new to TJ. He is always super on top of the rules. Now, that isn't to say that he's infallible, right? This could be working a much different way than any of us think, because a planeswalker's abilities being granted to a creature is very strange.
It is, both Grist and Agatha Soul Cauldron are strange cards that create lots of weird rules interactions. So when you mash them together, we're at a opalescence humility situation.
Right. What came first, the chicken or the egg,
The egg, reptile eggs.
Okay, but what came before that?
Dust.
Dust?
Yeah.
No, it's slime. Yeah, the ooze.
Yeah.
Look, you ever seen the first Power Rangers movie?
Of course.
Ivan Ooze.
Yeah.
He was first. He's the chicken before all the other chicken.
The Zord knees him in the groin in space.
All right. Well, this is the longest judge call in history, but it'll be sorted here in just a moment. Garrison was just double checking the IPG on Agatha Soul Cauldron for the FAQ to make sure that he understands exactly how this interaction is going to work, and he's explaining not only to TJ but mostly to Dylan, who is the one who was questioning how the interaction worked. Once these players get finished up, we're going to give them roughly 3 or 4 minute time extension. And now Dylan wants to respond, and we're going to besage you on that Agatha Soul Cauldron before it's able to gain the abilities, and the Grist will get exiled, and a +1/+1 counter can still go to another creature, I believe.
And so we're done thinking about this crazy
Yes.
interaction.
All right. Moving on with my life. TJ going to be going back his way. Gets a counter on one of his creatures, I hope. Maybe not.
Yeah, we did still activate the Agatha Soul Cauldron, so we got to resolve that. TJ points to his token.
Yep.
Let's pump it up.
And we're going to go fetching. Down to 19. Gonna go get likely another Overgrown Tomb. No Fear of Blood Moon from the other side. Dillingham with the very nice Besage You there. Once we got confirmation on exactly how the interaction worked with Agatha Soul Cauldron, was able to use the Besage You in response to the exile. And now no harm, no foul.
And that leaves Dylan in a pretty solid position here. Has two very large creatures trying to pressure TJ. So TJ going to need something pretty good here.
All right, this Soul Cauldron should be in the graveyard. I think the judge just wanted to look at it for just a second. So we're going to put that there in just a moment.
I see a Quarter Calling in TJ's hand. And we're one away from being able to cord for 4.
Yeah, but we're about to go back to TJ's turn. No, I don't actually know what the question is here. I think we're still checking to make sure that it gets a +1/+1 counter. This is a big holdup. We apologize for the inconvenience, folks. We'll get this sorted shortly, and then these players will be back at it. They do play pretty fast, too, so I expect the action to get hot and heavy once this judge call is concluded.
I see Grist in hand for TJ as well, so could use that to, say, destroy the Waker Waves.
All right, here we go. TJ gets to untap. We have another Agatha Soul Cauldron hand, it looks like,
so
as well.
Looks like a very solid hand for TJ. He's got plenty of options here.
Yep.
I imagine the Cauldron will come down. Cauldron plus Grist seems like a pretty good turn.
Yeah, Cauldron plus Grist seems great in general, but also, Grist is just messed up. Card's great.
Yeah, it goes for a plus on the Grist, so just content to, chump block some of these creatures or force them to attack Grist.
Now here comes the Delighted Halfling. We can cord for 1 now if we want to. We're going to play a Nurturing Peatland.
And now we have enough mana for the second Soul Card.
Okay. All right. Now, this is going to chew up the graveyard from Dillinham's side of things if he wants to cycle some of those creatures. But ultimately, TJ is going to utilize that on his own stuff to potentially find a combo kill. We're going to go back Dillinham's way, but first, cycling Architects of Will. Cycling the 4/4 flyer. Now...
Dylan has 2 Violent Outbursts in hand, so he has the ability to, maneuver this battlefield around a little bit too. But the Soul Cauldron can just exile Curator of Mysteries. That'll leave Dylan with no pressure. I think that was a Force Negation as well. That's a solid draw. Could potentially counter the Court of Calling.
Right. Be tricky on timing. He'll obviously want to cast it over pitch it if he's got access to mana. TJ with the Court of Calling at instant speed could do it on Dillinham's turn at some point, maybe throwing a wrench in the plans. Grist down.
TJ once again valuing his battlefield of creatures over keeping the Grist around and wants to exile the Grist to Soul Cauldron.
All right, Dillinham's in a rock and hard place because if he goes for a living end at instant speed, it's going to be detrimental to his own board, but TJ is going to basically build his board back up. Soul Cauldron's going to stay in play, and then any future creature can basically become a Grist. And now both of these insects are acting like Grist. We'll see if Dillingham wants to blow it all up in response. Says no. All right. May I untap? Please, for the love of God.
Notably, if Dylan had Violent Outbursted into Living End in response to this Soul Cauldron activation, the Grist would have entered the battlefield.
Right.
I don't know where Dylan would rather have it.
Mr. Director, would you mind checking to see the time extension so we can get their clock updated when you get a moment? And then they will have some extra time from that judge call, and it will be reflected on the screen momentarily.
So Dylan lets the activation of the Soul Cauldron resolve before going for this living end. There's 2 creatures in his graveyard, and with it tapped, the Cauldron tapped, they'll both enter.
Now, this is still Dylan Ham's in steps. So TJ gets to untap with Agatha Soul Cauldron and a bunch of creatures in play and can just put a counter on one of these other creatures, and then it becomes a grist.
Yeah, the one thing he's missing here is it doesn't have any Undying creatures. Yeah, okay. Architects targets TJ, so Dylan can, set the top of his deck.
Oh. And he just packs it in. He's done. He's out of here. It's time for lunch.
He must have seen some gooders.
I saw Court of Calling. I didn't know what else is on there, but Court of Calling's pretty
Gilded
scary.
Goose as well, but I'm not sure if there's a goose in TJ's deck.
Maybe there is. It is a 2 toughness creature that can accelerate along with Delighted Halfling. Anyway, as these players are shuffling up here for game number 2, I'm going to have my man Ross go over their sideboards and give you his expert analysis to see what he would cut and bring in. What you got for me, Ross?
Starting with Dylan Ham, I see 3 copies of Subtlety, 3 Endurance, 2 Blood Moon, 2 Force of Vigor, 2 Bone Crusher Giant, 1 Vendilion Click, 1 Ingot Chewer, and 1 Dismember. I like the Subtleties.
Okay.
Very good at stopping different mana creatures early if you want to. It can stop a Grist, but it can also just stop an Endurance in response to your living end.
Right.
I think that's its best application. I kind of like Vendilion Click because it checks for Endurance, and I like Dismember to deal with early mana creatures.
Yeah, sounds great.
Now, going over to TJ.
All the Endurances, anti-graveyards.
Yeah, he has 1 Endurance already in the main deck. How many in the 2 more in the sideboard, so 3 total. Good number.
Plus,
Also,
those Agatha Soul Cauldrons do technically chew up your opponent's graveyard if you want to play it early and do that.
Yep, he also has 2 Force of Vigor, 2 Elven Chorus, 2 Fatal Push, 1 Haywire Might, 1 Collector Oof, 1 Soulless Jailer, 1 Chalice of the Void, 1 Go for the Throat, 1 Veil of Summer, and 1 Fulminator Mage. The Chalice of the Void, excellent. Chalice on 0 against Cascade decks. Veil of Summer is solid against Force of Negation and Grief. Maybe you want something like that.
Yeah.
Soulless Jailer.
I don't think that
Permanence
works.
cards in graveyards can't enter the battlefield, and players can't cast non-creature spells from graveyard or exile. Okay, so that's second. So the first clause does nothing. Because living end exiles the creatures in the graveyard first, then you sacrifice all the creatures in play, then you move the creatures that were exiled into the battlefield. So
that was always a huge bummer. Grafdigger's Cage not stopping living end.
But not being able to cast cards from exile, that's where Cascade puts them, so you can't actually cast the living end in the first place. So Soulless Jailer is an effective piece of hate, unlike Grafdigger's Cage.
Should we be playing just like 4 of that card in every sideboard because it's like Chalice of the Void against the 0 decks?
It's cost 2 mana.
Yeah, that's less than 3 mana, which is how much it costs to cast those spells.
It does seem like a solid option, and it's a creature, so you can find it with Court of Calling.
Plus, it doubles as Dredge Hate, which that's a big plus in my book.
And TJ did just beat Dredge last round. We saw Matthew Kuzma the round before. He is now X-1.
All right, both players here shuffling up for game number 2. Let's see if they do what Ross said or head in their own direction. Looks like TJ's hand is looking pretty good. Dylan on the mold of 6, and we're underway. Island for Dylan Ham. He is known to play whatever he thinks is best in the metagame at any given time. This living end deck is not something I've seen him play before, so you know it's got to be good if that's what he's digging for.
Ooh.
Basic Forest.
Did we bring in Blood Moon?
Are there Blood Moons in the sideboard? If there's Blood Moons in the sideboard, that Forest is like, uh-oh, if you're TJ Radizak. Uh-oh. There's a Forest. Shardless Agent in hand, Generosent, a couple other cards, Street Wraith. We could maybe have a living end next turn that's pretty big. If you're TJ, what do you do here? Try to get this Grist down, chew up through the graveyard a little bit?
I think Dylan is trying to play around a potential Magus of the Moon from TJ. Sometimes the Yawgmoth deck sideboard 1 Magus as a tutor target.
Okay, I'm into it. A fetch from TJ. Now, Dylan could also just be like, oh, what if I just draw it? What if I just draw Blood Moon? Maybe he doesn't have it in hand.
Yeah, but Blood Moon is a pretty weak card against the Yawgmoth deck. They have all these mana creatures. They have plenty of basics.
Yeah, but Delighted Halfling is like tapping for colorless a bunch. You know, it doesn't matter. All right, here's Grist.
Uncounterable.
Anyway, here's Grist. Alexa, play Grist.
So anyway, here's Wonderwall.
I mean, yeah, that's what I was doing. You get it.
I got a laugh out of a director, so that's a win for me.
Man, how do you get the laugh? I literally did the joke. You just said the old version of the joke.
Yeah, otherwise known as the good version.
Okay. All right. We're going to do the Waker of Waves. Going to put Charlotte Sage into the graveyard, finding something else a little bit better for Dillingham, I suppose. Cycling a Generous Int. Not going to be going for the Living End this turn. Giving TJ an extra turn to find an Endurance. Maybe he's already got one. Stomping Grounds to pick up for Dillingham. Going to be playing that going down to 18. We'll see if he has a piece of interaction or just more cycling.
I do see a Yawgmoth in hand for TJ. I think that was a Colony Garden.
All right, Stranglegeist is the mill. We get another insect. Colony Garden's a nice one in these decks.
Yeah, you saw it initially before Delighted Halfling. A lot of the Yawgmoth decks were playing Arboreal Grazer as a way to play around Ren and 6 and cheap removal on their mana creatures.
Yeah,
and Fury. And Colony Garden went really well with Arboreal Grazer.
Yeah, it helps the Convoke on Quarter Calling quite a bit.
And the Yawgmoth players liked it enough that even after Grazer got replaced, they've kept a couple Colony Gardens in.
Love it. All right, here comes Wall Roots into Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Dillingham, do you have the answer? If not, TJ's probably going to start eating up your graveyard. Be my guess. Gonna read it again. Why don't we get it on screen so we can read it again, too? Because it's got a lot of text on it, and if someone as strong as Dillingham's reading it a second time, I want to read it a second time, too. So, he's going to go ahead and Waker Waves, looking for a Force Negation or something similar, but Agatha's Soul Cauldron can tap to exile target card from a graveyard. And then when a creature card is exiled this way, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So, now we got Colony Garden, an Elliot Raft token, and we're going to go back Dillingham's way.
At this point, though, there is a bunch of creatures in Dillingham's graveyard. The Soul Cauldron is going to be rather ineffective at stopping a Living End from being really powerful.
But then all your creatures get the activated abilities of Waker of Waves.
But we have the cord. This is a cord for 3.
I think we're going to use this to get Endurance to eat the graveyard from Dillingham. So this is going to be a straight-up munchin of the graveyard. And TJ is going to be left with Wall of Roots, Stranglegeist. Gonna go get Soulless Jailer and shut it down.
Okay.
Does Dillingham have a way to stop this at 0 mana? I think the answer is no.
Yeah, he was actually short for 3 because you get a mana for the Wall of Roots and you had 4 creatures tapped. So yeah, this was Exugals 2. So very important that he has the Jailer. Would not have been able to get the Endurance there.
Yeah, Soulless Jailer, when we were peeking at it in the sideboard, I wasn't sure because it does mirror the Grafdigger's Cage in its first ability, but that second ability, players can't cast non-creature spells from graveyards or exile. The way the Cascade works, it flips until it finds something to play, and then it exiles it, and then casts it. So, heads up from TJ, that Court of Calling is backbreaking for Dillingham.
Yeah, TJ's going to be able to play a Yawgmoth this turn with a huge number of creatures on the battlefield. Just doesn't have the Undying creatures to start really going nuts.
The coolest thing about the Soulless Jailer is stopping the Living End from being cast, because Living End itself is dual-sided in nature. Not only does it bring back a lot of your awesome creatures from the graveyard that you cycle, but it also gives a huge Wrath effect that sweeps your opponent's board and stops them. And TJ here just got the World's Fair now thanks to that Soulless Jailer.
Yeah, plays the Yawgmoth using the Wall of Roots mana, so you can leave up more mana on Dillingham's turn potentially for a Court of Calling. Oh, the Force of Negation. I guess that Force wouldn't have been good because we had Charlotte Sage as the Cascader, but...
Well, also because you can't force on your own turn for free.
Yeah.
So you couldn't stop the Court of Calling in that way. All right. Pendlehaven goes to the graveyard from the Grist. Tons of tokens. We're going to swing in here for a little bit of damage. A block from the Shardless Agent's going to trade.
Interesting. I guess there's no Wall of Roots exiled with the Soul Cauldron. We could have exiled that, potentially generated more mana, left ourselves with more mana up on Dylan's turn, but I think TJ is looking to try to just whittle down Dylan's graveyard a little bit.
Yeah, until Dylan actually deals with the Soulless Jailer, his game plan is fractured. And TJ knows that. So he's not going to overextend too much if he doesn't have to. At any point, if Dillingham does find a way to resolve a living in, TJ can just sacrifice his whole board and draw a bunch of cards, and then all those creatures will come back from the graveyard. So Dylan needs an answer to Soulless Jailer, another living in, and a way to exile the graveyard from TJ's side via Endurance or something similar.
And that is a lot to ask here because TJ is going to start drawing a bunch of cards, and as soon as he assembles an Undying creature or two, that should be game over.
Yeah, we'll see if TJ might be able to close it out this turn with a ton of potential card draw effects here. Also has the potential to ultimate Grist.
Uh-oh.
Here's a Yawgmoth. Now, Yawgmoth plus Agatha's Soul Cauldron, I think, is enough to do some really dirty stuff. I haven't really seen this in action yet, but anything that has a +1/+1 counter on it can now be used, and so I guess they all have Undying or whatever?
Agatha the Soul Cauldron only gives activated abilities.
Only activated abilities, okay.
Also, Undying not very useful on creatures that have +1/+1 counters.
Got it. Okay, well, we can still draw a bunch of cards with the Yawgmoth.
Yeah, it is still an excellent draw here. We just need to find one more Undying creature, and things are basically locked up.
Yep, and Court of Calling does it too, so we just have tons of outs here to just straight up kill. Mills over, Grist, that's an extra token.
Run it back.
Yes. Love to see it. Might have had straight up lethal if he goes tick up once and then maybe tick down for the ult. It's pretty close regardless. Just looking for a straight kill.
I'm pretty sure TJ is going to draw 19 cards this turn, and then those 19 cards will probably kill Dylan.
You would imagine. You know? I don't want to say 100%. It's like, you know, whatever the probability is of getting hit by a plane.
Pretty low.
Pretty low. Not zero, though.
It's really low. Uh-oh.
All right, we got a judge call. Not sure exactly what happened, but... Soulless Jailer doing some Soulless Jailer stuff. It affects both players, I guess, right? All right, let's get Soulless Jailer back on the screen because we are doing combo stuff with our Yawgmoth, and we're not supposed to be because the Soulless Jailer is locking it down. All right, well, it looks like the judge call is finally done. We're going to get our director to go ask the judge exactly what the fix was. I believe TJ put a bunch of cards from his hand back into the deck, and now we're essentially going to be left with the Yawgmoth in the graveyard.
So that's it. Okay, an insect token.
All right, I'm going to step out, and I'm going to let our Judge Garrison come over here and tell us exactly how the fix came. And we'll just let the players play.
Yeah. Okay, Garrison. Seemed like a very complicated situation. You had to, talk to both players. What was ultimately the outcome and the ruling that was made?
Yeah, for sure. So that was a situation where a player had ended up drawing 6 extra cards after having incorrectly resolved an Undying ability that should not have brought anything back through their own static effect of their own Soulless Jailer. So the initial infraction being a game rule violation for returning a creature to the battlefield through their own effect that it wasn't supposed to. With that, the choices are essentially either to back up the game to the point of the infraction or to leave the game as it is. Drawing 6 extra cards, probably not something that is a good thing to be doing in that case, but also there were some actions taken in the middle, such as the Grist activation, that led to some murkiness in terms of the order of the draws and the number of insects that existed. We repaired that as much as possible to make sure we had the right number of insects and other tokens on the battlefield that have been involved in the process. Back the game up to the Yawgmoth being left in the graveyard instead of returning to the battlefield. Now, with a game rule violation backup, typically the backup would involve just putting the cards back on top of the library in a random order. In this case, we both players were of the mindset they would prefer to shuffle the cards away, and with the density of information among the 6 cards being drawn, it was a deviation to shuffle the cards, but it seemed the best thing to do for both the players.
Okay. And was it random cards that got put back, or was Dylan able to look at TJ's hand and choose the cards he wanted to get put back?
Yeah, because it was a game rule violation, when we perform a backup for a game rule violation, we are choosing a number card, well, the determined number of cards, but the card's identity is determined at random, as opposed to a hidden card error, which would be what we refer to as the Thoughtseize fix, where the opponent gets that knowledge and that choice of it. So in this case, it was a random set of 6 cards of the 7 cards currently in TJ's hands that were put back into the library.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that thorough explanation. And it looks like TJ was able to take that game down. So yeah, that was great. Good luck, judging the rest of the event. Hopefully we don't have any more really involved judge calls. We've had a few on camera so far.
Yeah, from TJ's deck himself. Yeah, there's a lot of fun things in that one.
Hopefully smooth sailing from here.
Yeah, thank you, Ross.
Thanks. All right. Well, after that big old cluster cluck, we got a ruling that is satisfactory in my book. Garrison, great job on that. Tough fix, drawing 6 extra cards. What are you gonna do? You gotta fix it to the best of your ability to make sure that the integrity of the game is upheld. And Dillingham still unable to come back. Obviously, even with the young wolf staying in the graveyard, just a massive advantage because of the grist, the Agatha Soul Cauldron, and all the creatures that have a +1/+1 counter on them are just grist now, and so they all get to add a loyalty to make another grist activation.
Yeah, very, very quickly snowballs from there, and TJ able to take it down within a matter of a couple turns, which seems like the pattern with all of our judge calls. We've had all these long judge calls, and then the game ends within 30 seconds.
Yeah, comes back, I'm still dead.